Okay, hi, it's Jerry and Nick, and we are on the popular Newsmakers Zoom chat channel. And we're talking about what else? The coronavirus. Hi, Nick, where are
Hey
you?
man, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Are you in the office?
I am in the office.
So you're not self quarantining?
I am not. I have. I am one of the lucky people to have a office of my own with a door that can be closed, so I can sort of self quarantine at work.
All
Plus,
right.
most
All
people
right.
don't even show up here. Everybody else at the paper is working from home, so it's sort of like I have my own get away from it all quarantine center.
And are you using Lysol on all the door handles daily and stuff?
I am doing that. I'm spraying down the door handles with a bleach water combination and wiping it down my desk and keyboards. And my hands are raw and bloody from
Oh,
being washed.
this is so weird because 40 days ago, we were talking about the world's biggest story, which was the DOS Laura race for supervisor. And it just seems like a former life now. I mean, I've been trying to think of any story or event that's remotely like this. I mean, for people of a certain age, we had the Kennedy assassinations, which changed everything, and we had 9/11, and of course Y2K, that was a big one. But I mean, this is it's about everything. Uh, can you compare it to anything that you've ever covered or lived through?
No, I mean for Santa Barbara, the closest that I could approximate would be, the Thomas Fire and debris flow. But really, that was such a finite and confined event compared to what we're going through now. I mean, you walk down the street and you look up in the sky and you see a plane. You think, "Oh man, I'd like to get on that plane. I could get out of here." But then the problem is, wherever you land, it's there. I mean, it's not just the droplets; it's the aerosol spray, and you don't have to have sex to be exchanging bodily fluids. And there's no escape. There's no escape, and there's no end in sight, which makes it very different. So one event that
And we
kind
don't
of,
know where we are in the process, whatever the process.
you know, it feels to me like we are still in the foothills of launch, and we basically it's 3 or 4 weeks of sort of spinning our wheels, getting ready for it really to get bad, and maybe, and this is the hopeful, is that if by all the sort of quarantining, shelter in place, don't talk to anybody, cross the street, cover your face with a medical chador, um, we have delayed and brought it down so that the worst case scenarios that we had fabricated never come to pass.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it sort of from a journalism point of view, and I'm, been writing about it, but I'm just an old guy here in the wildland urban interface typing in my pajamas. But from the perspective of an actual news organization, it just seems like it's sort of a triple whammy because you got this huge story that is about everything that you're trying to get your arms around, but you're also living it. So it's like everybody who's working on it is exposed every time they go out. It's not like you go to the fire and then come back.
Right.
And then the third thing is, you know, all across the country, newspapers and websites, laying people off, cutting wages, going out of business, and especially in this town where the advertising base is small business, it's just a killer. So I wanted to kind of get your take on each one of those things. So first of all, when did you guys kind of realize, gee, maybe that forward-looking analysis of where the board of supervisors goes from here can go on the back burner, and we need to focus on this pretty much exclusively, right? Your whole issue this
Well,
week.
for the past four issues, I think there have been a handful of stories that are not coronavirus related, but pretty much.
Oh,
related. And if you look on our website,
You know what? You just froze there for a second.
oh,
So,
okay.
so go back to where you said for the last four issues.
Okay. For the last four issues, pretty much everything we've written has been coronavirus related. There have been a handful, and only that, of non-coronavirus stories. Um, and that doesn't count what we posted online, which is about 8 times that amount. And I think that we have all been in sort of perseveration mode, OCD mode, sprint mode, and everybody has been churning and cranking out as many stories as they possibly can, all reflecting some aspect of this new reality. And it's really hard, given the deadline constraints and the space constraints, and really the social distancing constraints, to make connection with people, to get the sort of in-depth human story that you would want to get, and at the same time trying to get the basic facts of like how many tests are being given. That has been almost impossible to get a good number on. The numbers have been all over the map, and the public health numbers jive with the hospital numbers, and so we don't know how many tests are going. We just know that it's not enough.
Same with ventilators and ICU beds. I know. So has that been a function of just everybody who's working on it, sort of on a frontline or administrative basis, is just too busy to talk to you? Or do you think it's been a lack of transparency on the part of public health and Cottage?
I just think that the people, Cottage is extremely careful about what they say, and what is the word? One of the new words we've learned is titrate, and everything is being titrated. And Cottage has always been very careful about how they titrate information out to the media. So they're very careful, and they've always been very careful, and that has been frustrating for both them and certainly for us. The county, they had about 5 weeks ago, they had this big press event, come on down. We went to the university, their public health university center, and met all the people who are in charge. And if you have any questions, here's who you call.
That was before social distancing that happened?
That was actually before social distancing. And it was a great idea, but then in practice, it's been very difficult. I would say, when you contact those in the know at the county, first of all, it's hard to know who knows. And everybody is scrambling, and everybody is like working overtime and working really hard. And the last thing that they have is information that they can give the media with any reliability. And of course, the information changes every 5 seconds. So by the time you actually do have a fact and you've got it, it's moved on and it's changed.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody is trying to cover up. I just think the people who have the information have other things to do than to make sure that the media has it at the time when the media wants it. It has gotten better.
Except the media is, I mean, that's like saying, we have more important things to do than to let the public know, because, I mean, the public health update on the web has gotten better, but it wasn't very good to start. So, I mean, you have this panicked, to a certain extent, more or less, population of people that are like, what? Everything just changed. And so they're not really seeing you as a partner in all this.
I think if I had to guess, I would say that the public health officials and to the extent the county has a cohesive strategy, it is, here's the message: isolate, stay home, don't go out, stay away from other people. If you do that long enough and intense enough, maybe the angel of death will pass over, and maybe we won't have as many dead people and as many overrun ICU beds. And everything else beyond that is extraneous detail. But what they don't get sometimes is the extent to which those extraneous details are necessary for members of the community. Oh, the people at the top know what they're talking about.
Buy in.
information.
buy into
And
it.
so for us to buy into it, we need what they might consider our extraneous details.
Yeah. So since it became apparent that it was going to be a big problem, obviously the priority has been the public health piece of it, the pandemic, but then you have this looming recession. We got 10, 15% of the population is unemployed. You got businesses closing down. How did you internally decide, these are the priority stories for us, and how often does that change? And do people have beats? I mean, just how do you approach that?
I wish I had a better answer. This is sort of the way it works. We had a news meeting a while back, and the strategy was, it was sort of like, when you're playing a pickup football game when you're a kid, and everybody went in the huddle. It was like, everybody go long. And then at the end of the week, we'll see how much stuff we can fit in the paper, and then the rest of it goes online. And it's sort of been mad scramble. And I think at this point it's starting to calm down a little bit. And the initial focus was obviously, how many sick people do we have? How many tests do we have? What are the efforts being made by the public health officials to expand testing, to get us the number of hospital rooms that we need, et cetera? What kind of surge planning is going on? And at this point, I think people are starting to flash more on the economic hardship. Like, okay, now that everybody's out of work, what do they do now? What, they just go to the food bank? At this point, I don't know how many people in Santa Barbara County have submitted applications for unemployment insurance. I don't know about you, but the unemployment insurance bureaucracy has always been notoriously slow, cumbersome, and medieval. And the idea that they would be able to ramp up, to expand, to accommodate this demand is sort of mind-boggling. So at this point, I don't really know how hard it's been, but that's kind of the next thing. People will need money to live and buy groceries, and that I don't know how bad, but that's going to be the next big story.
So give us your, what's your sense of the timeline now? It's what is it? It's April 10th today. Trump is saying, oh, let's reopen the economy, whatever that means, by May 1st. But then you have all these various pandemic forecasting models that say, we got to keep social distancing. We don't know how, we don't know what the denominator is in terms of how the testing and so on. I mean, what's your best sense of what the decision makers, who ultimately, I guess, would be at the county, the supervisors and the public health people, how they see the next 30 to 90 days?
I think that the sense I have is they're trying to get everybody to lay low in the boat and maintain social distancing so that our health infrastructure is not overwhelmed. It's not clear to me exactly how big and broad their expansion plans are. So are they going to put hospital quarters out of Earl Warren or Sears, which has been talked about? Where are they going to have their pop-up hospital? Or are we going to need a pop-up hospital? This week, the Board of Supervisors heard some models for how they're going to plan the surge, and they're really all over the place. And they made it clear that these models probably aren't worth the paper they were written on. Certainly not if it was toilet paper, but it's the best that they have. And the sense you get looking at the projections there is that sometime between July and August, and the end of August, we are likely to see the most intense peaks in terms of demand of hospital beds, intensive care beds.
Oh, so this wave is going to keep going until then. We haven't flattened the curve yet.
I think the good news that I'm hearing is that our rate of increase is not what they worried about at first. So initially they thought the number of cases would double every 6 days. That's not happening. It's slower than that. And if you look at it, there's actually been a slight decrease in the number of people in ICU beds. And we've had
That's true. That's true statewide too. The governor said
yeah,
that.
and
Well,
Governor Newsom made a point, said, hey, look, this is a point in time, don't make out a trend. But it at least is sort of an encouraging sign. Santa Barbara County is very, lucky in that we have had 2 fatalities only. Ventura County, I think it was 6. Obviously, LA is just a whole other world of pain. So, it's interesting. Delaney Smith, who is a reporter here, has done some research. She's working on a story, I think, that has been posted about the anticipation by the coroner's office. And at that point, initially, the coroner was talking, we need to have facilities to handle 330 corpses. That for Santa Barbara County is huge. I mean, we had, when the boat, the Conception, blew up this past summer, that was 34. When the debris flow wiped everybody out 2 years ago, that was 23. So 330, that's a scary number. But then, again, the numbers are all over the place. When the Board of Supervisors were hearing various model projections on Tuesday, one of the models indicated that by August 4th, I believe, we would have 57 casualties. So
the time frame that they're looking at in terms of the models now go basically into August.
They go into August, and Vanda Reynoso, who is the head of the county health department, made it very clear when she was talking to the supervisors, look, these are not written in stone. These are best guesses, underlying the word guess. They're probably good for a couple of months at best. But then when she was asked by Joan Hartman, county supervisor, and Peter Adams, county supervisor, so you're saying this, you're projecting this out into November, she said yes. And so, of course, the media, myself included, everybody, oh my God, we're talking till November. And then yesterday at the press conference, they tried to sort of walk that back and say, well, yes, November, but that's really whimsical at best.
No wonder they don't talk to the media. So I thought Doss's comment the other day was on point, which is, yeah, you give us these models, and Peter Adam was squawking about the economy and how everybody's going to go under, and Doss sort of said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but ultimately this is a policymaker decision. It's a political decision that the board is going to make, because to say, okay, this group of people can go out and this group of people can go out, I don't know how you rank that. There's a story this morning I was reading about how in China people have different colored lights on their phone to signify what their pandemic status is. I don't imagine we're going to do that. But is there a marker? Is there a metric of 2 weeks with no new infections, or 2 weeks with no new eyes, that they use to say, yeah, this is probably okay for most people, unlike, say, geezer immunocompromised people such as myself to go out? Are you aware of that, Annie?
If such a level of specificity exists, I don't know about it. I will say that I think we are a little bit behind in terms of where we should be. I know that for the last week or 2 weeks, they were putting the finishing touches on surge planning. And what surge planning means is what is our inventory of medical stuff, and what is the anticipated load, and how much can we mitigate it with social distancing?
That's a worst case deal.
And those are worst case and best case. And it took them a long time to they had to get some extra studies and whatnot, and they were spending all weekend doing surge planning. Before that, all the medical establishments, public health, cottage, etc., we're trying to figure out what is the method by which we ration out tests, and how do we figure out who gets a test and who doesn't. And so they had to spend a whole
Yeah,
weekend.
let's talk about testing, because that's the original sin of this whole thing, is that, if to the extent the federal government screwed up, that was the screw up, that they didn't have a test ready to go off the shelf, and B, have a plan for distributing it. So ultimately, we never had a denominator. We still don't know how widespread it is. I mean, the numbers go up once you do more tests, but nobody really knows. So where do we stand on testing for Santa Barbara County?
I don't have a good number for you on that. I don't have a good number for myself on that. I know it is better. When we started this thing, the county lab had no testing capability at all. And so we were sending our results to either Ventura County or San Luis Obispo County. Then San Luis Obispo County had some glitches up there, and that got shut off. So we could get in at Ventura County's public lab when they weren't too busy running their own. Then the private labs got into it, but they were much slower in the turnaround. And so now, I think our testing is better, and I hazard to give any kind of a number in terms of how many we can do a day. But
Well,
it's definitely not better, but it's still very much rationed.
Yeah. Well, Gavin's trying to crank it up through Stanford and have these 5 testing sites where they can, because the other problem is, if you have a 3 to 5 day turnaround, all that tells you is you didn't have the coronavirus on the day you took the test, but that doesn't mean you don't have the coronavirus today. So it's such a mess. All right, I want to talk about the economy a little bit, because obviously, huge blow to the economy. I mean, we've been talking for years about, what do we do about State Street? Well, maybe we could do this. I mean, that's all out the window. I mean, what does that mean? And then specifically, I mean, the independent is a small business as well, and which is dependent upon advertising from other small businesses. So, what's your take on kind of how do we get back, or what does the process look like for economic planning? And secondly, kind of where are you guys at?
Well, I could speak to the latter with a little bit more specificity. I mean, we usually we put out 40,000 papers. Because of the loss of revenues from loss of advertising. I mean, the Granada Theater, nobody's going to the Granada Theater, nobody's going to arts and entertainment, nobody's going to the movies, nobody's going to the Libero, nobody's going to the Chumash Casino. All these big advertisers, what are they going to do? So they're on the sideline. So we've cut our print run by half. Our papers,
you're printing 20,000,
22, somewhere like that, and 25. And
you know what the returns are?
I don't. We used to run 80, 84 page, 92 page, sometimes 100, issues. This week we were down to 40. That is, I remember seeing 40 before, but that was a long time ago, and that was a very scary time ago.
Like they're in the recession.
And in the recession, we all took significant pay cuts. We've had a number of longtime writers, editors here who have been furloughed. We've had a lot of graphic designers. We don't have as many ads to produce, so we've had that hours cut or furloughs. We haven't laid anybody off yet, but the wolf is definitely at the door.
Yeah, and so talk about what the paper is trying to do to keep going economically.
Well, what we are doing is we have been putting out an appeal to our readers and to other people in the community, saying we need your help. We are up against it, and we have certain strategies here that we think we can use to keep reporters on the payroll and producing news that would be of value and
One is
information
a
that would be of value.
subscription, right?
Huh?
One's a subscription.
One is a subscription, and I don't have a number for you in terms of dollars, but people have been very generous. I got a call yesterday from a family trust that they're going to donate $5,000 to the paper. That would probably be the highest amount we've seen. Most people are given $29.99. Trying to navigate what I am told is not necessarily the easiest portal to sign up for a subscription.
Yeah. And then you got this nonprofit deal with
SB Can.
What's that about?
Well, what we're trying to do is, if people make donations to SB Can has agreed to act as sort of a financial intermediary and follow that to certain specific types of news coverage, social justice, environmental, and obviously COVID is going to enter into both of those. And so that is a sort of a backdoor conduit that allows people in the community to make more sizable donations if they want.
Yeah, and you wrote you wrote a piece about it a couple of weeks ago, kind of laying this all out. And the line that jumped out to me is, hey, look, we're both a weekly and pretty much the daily here. And those of us of a certain age who have a understanding of the history of journalism in Santa Barbara knows what that means. I mean, you really are trying to do everything. I mean, you're trying to cover the breaking stuff and explain what it means and, where does the future lie? So, I mean, I thought that's a pretty good deal for $29.99. Not that.
Yeah, no, it's Santa Barbara is tip of the spear here in terms of media dysfunction. As you know, what you're alluding to was the 2006, 2000 around then, where the news press famously imploded and has not really recovered. I mean, if you look at the poor news press now, I mean, was it 8 pages maybe?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't go.
They've gotten rid of the sports. They've gotten rid of a lot. They have huge headlines. They've got huge photographs. They've got a couple of reporters. We hear rumors about their demise with such regularity. We could have a full-time desk, assigned to tracking them down. We don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
We're having a hard enough time just keeping our own selves working. But at a time like this, you really do need a newspaper. Whether it's us or it's News Talk or whomever, you need a newspaper who is really cranking it out. And we have, Jean Yamamura, who is really the first reporter here on this story, and she was on it 2 weeks before the rest of us. So, okay, Jean, you take care of it. And it's sort of like distant thunder, right? I know. And then all of a sudden, distant thunder became the rainstorm, and it had to stop raining. So everybody is working on it. I mean, Brandon Fassman came out of retirement, and donated a free article. He did an interview with Thomas Tighe, who probably is, he's like the Buckaroo Banzai of disaster planning on a global basis at Direct Relief.
All right, man. But I'm going to let you get back to work. Don't forget the bleach. Don't forget the Lysol. And thanks for talking to us. And if you're watching this, subscribe to The Independent today. All right,
please,
man.
Please, baby, please. Thank you very much.
We'll talk to you.
Take care.
Bye.